Hello everyone, welcome to React development tutorial. In this tutorial, we will talk about application lifecycle, and specifically we will talk about React hooks. And these are the items that we will learn. We will learn what are the functions in application lifecycle that we can use, and they are very useful. And what are React hooks and how we can use them. So let's do that. Okay, first we need to know what is application lifecycle. It means that, for example, when you render the application, when you start the application, it takes time for React to load and add all of the DOM elements inside of the view. And then at the end, it shows the view that you see like this. It is happening really fast that we cannot see a lot of time. It maybe takes a fraction of seconds, but behind the scene, it just adding stuff, it painting and everything, and then at the end it shows all of the view. So if we want to show something at the time that the component is completely on the screen, we need to have some function. So for example, if you make an API call, you're asking your backend server to give you all of the student's name, and then you want it to load whenever the view is getting load. So you want to call some function that whenever my view gets load, call this API call. So that's why the application lifecycle is important. So sometimes you need it at the initial load, and sometimes you need it at the time that this view is getting to another view and you don't see this view anymore, and you want to clear this stuff. For example, in order to manage the memory, you want to remove all of your cache data, all of the form element data, in order to reduce the application size and have a better performance. This is just one example, but I'm saying we can do anything we want at this time when the view of this application are going to unmount, and we want to, for example, remove all of the data that we have on this view. So this is also another example that we need application lifecycle. And lifecycle means that the time that view gets into the existence, and the time that it's updating the properties of this application, and the time that it goes to end and we basically delete it or go into the next page. So this is called life cycle of application. How do we access it? React gives us some functions that we can use for example, if at the initial load there is a function that we can call. At the time of the property updates, it gives us another function, and at the time of view on load that we go to a different view, it will gives us another option to call some of our functions that we need. The best way for functional programming, don't get confused by the functional programming name. Maybe you feel that what is functional programming? Functional programming is the one that we've been doing through our tutorial. There are other types of programming that I will teach you at the end of this tutorial. Don't worry about it. The best way of learning React development is based on the functional programming. That's why I started that way. But for now, just know that for functional programming, lifecycle methods, they provide it as hooks. They call it React hooks, and you can access this lifecycle methods via React hooks. So I can show you what happens when the initial load of this application. So if I refresh the page, I gave some console method that whenever I load this page, I want to have some console message here that view did load. That's the method that I called. And then at the time that I update any of these fields, I need to again add the console that this field is getting updated. That's another one that I added for this application. At very last, I want to add a console that this view gets onload. For example, if I submit the form and it goes to a different view, I want to see some console here that this view is unmounted. And mount means that it became into existence. Unmount will means that it goes away and it disappears. So if I refresh the page, as you can see, we have some warnings that is not related to our tutorial. This is just basic warnings. But as you can see, it says component did mount. This is the lifecycle method that I called. And then it says name change, although I have not changed it here anymore. But because the initial time that I change it programmatically, it detects it as a change. But every time I change it, it again calls it, and you can see it increase the number. So it shows that it's watching the property and the life cycle. Basically, it's looking for my property to get called, and then it adds that console message to the screen. And now if I go to the next screen, which is submit button, it says component will unmount. Basically, this is another lifecycle method. So let's see how we can use these lifecycle methods, and what are these lifecycle methods in React. And the application that you just saw here, we had it in previous tutorials. If you have not watched it, I would definitely suggest to go back and watch these tutorials. Okay, here's the application that we created in previous tutorials, and from the structure that we have, I will open the home page that we created before, and we'll take a look at the code that we have. I minimized all of the unnecessary code that we don't need to know in this tutorial, and we'll add the new code within. So you can just focus on the ones that are not expanded. So I collapse these things so you don't get confused. We said that we want to add some lifecycle method that whenever we load the page and the view will completely mounted, we get called. So this is called hook, and that hook is called use effect. So I first import it here, and then the way that I can use it here is usually I put it on top of the methods, and this function gets an argument, and this argument is basically a function. So now, and so see, this is the signature of this function. First, you have to pass a function. We will add our stuff inside of here, and then you have to pass a bracket, empty bracket. If you put it empty bracket, it will call at the initial load of this page. So every time this page gets loaded, your function will get called, and it will call only once if you don't put anything here. That's very important to know. So use effect, if you want to call it, I'm just emphasizing it, if you want to call this use effect only once at the initial load, you need to add an empty object here. So now I can add my stuff here, console.log. Basically, I'm logging something in the console, the easiest thing, and say component did mount, and then I can save it and then go to my application and see how I can see. Zoom it in. Okay, I ran the application, and just to show you what happens on initial load is basically refreshing the page, and you will see the console log that we add is getting called twice. Wait, you said that this use effect, if we don't put anything inside of the bracket, it will get once. Why it got called twice? It turned out that inside of the index file that we have here, we added this in a very initial tutorial, React strict mode. So if this React strict mode is activated, it calls all of the render method twice. So in order to get rid of this issue, you can just comment it out or completely remove it. And now if I save it and go back to my application, this time it got called once. And that was for initial load. Every time that I want to do something on initial load, when the component is completely mounted, I can just put all of my logic inside of this use effect here. So whatever I need, put any code you want to load on initial component load. So that's all for component did mount. Okay, next thing that I want to do is that whenever I move away from this component, going to the different page, I want to console log something here. So currently it doesn't do anything, it doesn't add anything to the console. So I want to add this logic. And as you can see, this is for component did mount. This is for the, this is for this one that we just added here. In order to make it a console log whenever we move away from this component, it is very simple. We have to just return a value, return a function. So we return a function, and in this function we basically do anything we want to do. So I will do another console log, but this time I say component will on mount. So instead of this, whenever we move away from this component, it will console log this one. So not this. I save it and then go to the application. So I do the initial load. Initial load gives me component did mount. If I go to the different page, component will on mount. Now it's getting called. So that's all, and it's very simple for these two lifecycle methods, and both of them are in the same function. Both component did mount and component will on mount are in the same function, but the difference is this one should be inside of the return statement, but this one is just simply inside of the function. The next thing that we want to learn is if we have any props that gets updated during the application. For example, you have some API call, you fetch some data, and then, for example, on this view, you have a list of data here, and then suddenly you make an API call, you want to update something on the view, and it's important that view gets updated or reload itself after you get some data. So how do we do that? It's very simple. We use another use effect. So but we cannot use it inside of this one because this bracket should be empty. We need to use another one. The signature is exactly like the previous one. It gets the first argument is the function, and the second argument, again, this is a bracket, but this time we pass the props that we want to monitor. So for this purpose of testing, I add the name function. Every time we have a change on the name, I would like to do some console log. So I would say name has changed. Name has changed. So it monitors these props. Every time we get update for these props, it will update, it will console log, it will notify us, oh, this prop got updated. So let's test it. As you can see, this is the lifecycle method. First, first it did mount, it load the page first, and then since we have a function inside of our application, which is this one, handle on change, handle click, and we have where is it? Initial load set. This is the initial load. So initial load sets the name equal to empty string. For this reason, it detects a change here, and that's why it says name has changed. Basically, this is for the initial change. But every time I update it, you can see it adds another log. And if I add it one more time, it and include the counter, it basically in order to save some view here, it just increase the counter. But basically it adds to the console. That's all of the important lifecycle methods inside of the React and hooks. We have other React hooks, but these are the most useful one that we use very frequently inside of our application. Hope you understand this part of the tutorial. Like, comment, share, and let me know if any part of it was not very easy to understand, so I can explain it maybe in a different tutorial or answer your comments. Thank you.